Well, on this episode, we're going to be discussing something that I am always interested in, which is, does Hollywood accurately portray Christians, generally speaking? This episode is one of those episodes where you're actually going to come into a conversation that Roger and I might have at our house, especially sitting around the TV watching a television series, because this actually does happen.
Frequently.
This episode happens in our home frequently.
We'll have to do this one again, I think. So,
yeah,
frequently. So our topic today, it centers around a deeply influential platform in American lives, as well as for many people around the world, and that is Hollywood.
Hollywood.
Now, we're both big fans of several television series and movie franchises. We love using all of our fandoms in our presentations and teachings, and we think that Hollywood is an excellent platform for storytelling. And it really is. They do some great work. So we're not against the platform or the medium.
It is a really good platform for storytelling.
It is. It is. We just have questions about things that we regularly see in movies and sitcoms, TV series, Netflix, Amazon, all those good things. Nothing surprising there.
Right.
So the question we're going to focus on is what we continually see portrayed as an average churchgoer or an average pastor. Let's explore some more recent examples. And here we go. Are you ready for this?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So Angela from The Office.
Yep, Angela from The Office. She is hypocritical to the highest degree. She's judgmental. I'm gonna read my notes here. She's shallow. Mm-hmm. She doesn't seem to know anything about the Bible. Just in case you were wondering, doesn't follow the golden rule in the least. So if you're like, okay, remind me of what the golden rule is. This is that comes out of Luke 6, Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, where he says, as you want others to do for you, do so for them. She never does that, ever, on the show. She's quick to anger, and she shows no mercy.
Yes, and the irony is, in real life, she's a really sweet person.
Yeah, that's just the character of Angela. Now, the actress Angela that plays her seems quite nice.
Yeah. So the next one we want to look at today is Shirley from
Community.
Go ahead.
Oh, I get to read her. So Shirley is as stereotyped as they get. So if you've watched Community, I mean, that's no surprise because every character is an archetype or a stereotype.
What do you mean?
What do I mean by?
Well, every character is a stereotype or an archetype. What does that mean?
Community it's a unique show in which even the show itself reflects show stereotypes, like the comedy show, the old Western show.
Okay.
So
gotcha.
the characters on the show they're archetype characters that you might find in other shows.
Okay.
So they represent like a collective.
Somebody in the office would translate on a Community would translate onto Happy Days and so forth?
Well, actually, it would be that somebody on The Office, Happy Days, Bosom Buddies.
Hey!
Bosom Buddies, if you know that show, that's an old one.
I don't know if I ever watched Bosom Buddies.
Tom Hanks was in that. I think it was one of his first ones. Like all these old sitcoms, you could take a bunch of people and make them into an amalgam.
I love that word.
I don't know if that's right.
I use it wrongly a lot, so she always goes, no, that's not it. But when I get it right, she's like, okay.
So yeah, you could bring a bunch of people together, and they would be what I think the director's name or director was Dan Harmon. Is that right? Yeah. So
on Community.
Yeah, on Community. So he's bringing a bunch of different kinds of people he's seen and grown up with on different shows and putting them into one character.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I mean by an archetype.
So Shirley from Community is the second one. Angela from The Office was the first one.
Yes. So we haven't talked about Shirley.
Oh, talk about Shirley. Oh, yeah, we got to talk about Shirley. Oh.
She is. So I said she was stereotyped, and then we went off into archetype land and all that. But she is stereotyped. She's as stereotyped as they get when it comes to evangelical Christians. She's hypocritical, shallow, easily swayed. She's judgmental, constantly hiding her past. It's like the writer knows an evangelical Christian. Sorry, it's not all evangelicals, but that was something that I personally experienced. Anyway, constantly hiding her past. She unnervingly inserts statements about Jesus in very inappropriate ways. Every time she talks about Jesus, I want to go, no!
Quit representing us this way!
She superficially proselytizes. Okay, that's important. She treats church as a religious time card. So if you know what I mean by that, it's like the old workplace where you had to punch your time card to show when you came in and punch it to show when you go out, so everybody knows when you were there. There's some people that I describe as religious time card punchers. They're not there to actually get, like a congregational worship.
Right.
They like to experience that. Like they really miss out on that. It's more like, hey, look, I was in church.
Yeah.
That's what she is. And she's not generally portrayed as intelligent, even though she's a candidate for valedictorian at Greendale. But it is Greendale Community College, and it's portrayed as the worst college. So she's
the worst community college.
The top of the worst.
Yeah.
So, anyway, she's downright mean at times. She's selfish. And she doesn't seem to know anything beyond super basic Christmas time nativity scene Jesus Christianity. So that's Shirley.
From The Office. All right, so we have two more. The next one is Sheldon Cooper and his mom.
Yep, his mother.
Your mom, Sheldon Cooper and his mom.
Big Bang Theory.
Yeah. Now, Sheldon is originally from Houston. We lived in Houston for 13 years.
Okay, so do you mean Sheldon, the character, or
Sheldon.
the actor that plays Sheldon?
The actor that plays Sheldon. There we go. Thank you very much. So the actor that plays Sheldon, Jim Parsons?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's S.
I think so. Yeah. So he lived in Houston. So a lot of the references that they have is from the evangelical South, which is where we served for 13 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as a bonus, Sheldon is actually from the Houston area because he references the Baybrook Mall in one of the episodes.
Yes.
Anyway.
Although they put it in Galveston, but it actually wasn't in Galveston.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I know. I don't know why he did that. He's from the area. Anyway. So Sheldon's mom is portrayed as intellectually lazy, evangelical Christian. I sense a theme. She'll pray for Sheldon, and she basically loves him.
Yeah.
But she isn't interested in him for who he really is, as a super intellectual.
A super brain.
Yeah. She's not interested in that part of him. She's shallow. She's portrayed as inferior, generally to even average thinking people, and is reprimanded by her son for committing errors in reasoning. All right.
All right, so we have Angela from The Office, Shirley from Community, Sheldon and his mom from Big Bang Theory, and then our last one will be pastors in general in Hollywood and just how they're represented.
All right.
Go for it.
So there's a Christianity Today article called When Hollywood Goes to Church. And it talks about different stereotypes of Christians in Hollywood. And so they said this about pastors in general. They said preachers are usually judgmental jerks in the movies, but naive simpletons on TV.
Truth.
We're looking at you, The Simpsons. If a pastor is in a scene for anything other than a funeral, wedding, or confession booth, they'll turn out to be hypocritical or downright evil. If they're preaching on TV or radio, they're only after your money.
True.
If they pastor a megachurch, they're adulterous hypocrites. Mm-hmm. That's from the article.
Yeah. Yeah, so Hollywood writers and directors don't seem to know any Christians because they're all using the same, as you've already said, archetype.
Yeah, the same archetype character.
Yeah.
The shallow, hypocritical, intellectually lazy, religious time card punching Christian. And I don't know why that is.
It sells, and it's fun to make fun of religion if you're in Hollywood, and you don't like to be held accountable. There can't be objective truths. Otherwise, you can't put a lot of things that Hollywood people put into their movies.
Yeah,
so
actually,
there's some ideas.
Jeff Winger on Community is a good counterbalance because he's very pragmatic. Everything's pragmatic. He always talks about what works. He's a lawyer.
Yeah.
And so he gives a lot of explanations about truth is what works.
Yes.
So yeah, it's reflective probably of a lot of pragmatism going on in the world there, or in that world. So we talked about, we kind of want to give Community a pass here because on that show, every character is an archetype, as I said before. So you have like the white feminist activist. You have the... Britta. You have Annie, who kind of portrays the Catholic schoolgirl, but she's Jewish. So I don't know what there's kind of a mix there. You got the agnostic, jaded Gen X lawyer.
Jeff Winger.
Yeah, the evangelical Christian mom.
Shirley.
The Asperger's spectrum creative.
Abed,
yeah. The former high school jock.
Troy.
And the wealthy white boomer.
Chevy Chase Pierce. Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I'm tempted to give Community a pass. I know I brought in Shirley, but I just can't because Shirley's so cringeworthy. You know, oh, that's nice.
Oh.
You know, she says that all the time. And what they're showing you is this veneer, like she's not really sweet, right? She has this jaded past and she's really a mean person and she's struggling with that. But so she covers it with this veneer of sugary sweetness.
Yes.
And
I like your word veneer.
I gotta say, I've experienced a little bit of that in Christianity.
I've experienced a whole lot of that in Christianity. That's why I'm still in ministry.
Like,
don't do that. Make your faith real.
It's
Come
like
on.
all sugary sweet on the front.
Yeah.
But that's as far as it goes. It's just the icing. The cake is actually rotten.
Yes.
But the icing is really nice on the top. And Sugary, Sugary, I was going to call her
Sugary
Sugary.
Shirley.
She kind of represents that. But so we're saying that we're going to give community a little bit of a pass, even though we're still using Shirley in our group of our stereotyping Christians within Hollywood.
But not Angela. Not at all.
No, we don't give Angela a pass. Angela is just horrific. She's a horrific character.
Yes.
And I got to wonder if Ricky Gervais, if that's his view of Christians.
Oh, yeah, because Ricky Gervais is the one that created The Office in the UK, and then we brought over here to the US. If you don't know Ricky Gervais, get to know who he is. Outspoken atheist and likes to mock Christianity.
So I kind of think Angela's on purpose to demonstrate what he thinks about Christians in general. Yes. I don't know that. I haven't talked to him, but it seems like it. But
although one time on Twitter, I said something in a comment, and guess who commented back on Twitter? It's Ricky Gervais. I had like 1,000 people attacking me at one time. I didn't know what was happening.
15 seconds of fame.
15 seconds of Ricky Gervais fame. That was crazy. Anyway.
So... yeah. I guess I'm going to move on here a little bit. I guess the flatlining of Christian characters is due to a lack of experience with either historic Christianity and or with a broader spectrum of Christians. I'm not sure. We're speculating.
Yeah.
But when I look into Hollywood and past the 80s, we start to get the same character over and over and over and over and over.
So when you say flatline, you're saying it's the same character over and over and over again. There's no depth to them.
Well, they flatline. They take all these Christians that are across the world, right? And then they just reduce them down to the single American, superficial, intellectually lazy, evangelical, white, usually Christian.
So not much to the person.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the flatlining means they just kind of reduce them down to these particular character traits that they're representing that all Christians have through this one character on the show. Okay. And, one of the things that I mentioned in the first episode that we did on hypocrisy was that I was disappointed when I got into the church because when I came into church out of my atheism and out of a culture that didn't have a lot of, we weren't culturally Christians. So people didn't just talk about Jesus, and I didn't just know a bunch of Christians.
Yeah,
so I didn't
because
know
you're
much.
from the Pacific Northwest in the U.S.
Yeah, you can say that probably the West Coast. Well, I don't know. Pacific Northwest, yeah. So, I didn't really know much about Christians. And so when I came into the church and I had been reading the text that Christians believed, I thought they were going to be the people who were seeking after the stuff I read in the Bible. And I mean, like wholeheartedly and earnestly, like so naive. What I found when I came into church was people.
No.
Right? I found people, and they're all different.
Yep.
And they all have, different backgrounds and different personalities. And so it surprises me that a person who's going to build a character who's supposed to represent Christianity hasn't even moved beyond my initial disappointment.
Yes.
Like as an early believer that, this is just a lot of, regular people who have all the same kinds of problems. So, Christians aren't reducible to a single archetype. And I had to actually, when I was writing Why I Still Believe, we'd back and forth a lot because I kept flatlining them into this Southern evangelical person. And you kept saying, but not all Christians act that way. But not all Christians are like that.
I'd even push back on the individual people that we're trying to build from.
Yeah.
And say, no, they weren't exactly all just that. So you can't really do that.
Yeah. And so anyway, it's difficult because we are talking about a medium where you have to wrap things up in 30 minutes to an hour, or you might get 2.5 hours if you're doing a feature length film. But it's odd that it's the same stereotype every time.
Yes.
We haven't found, Jeff Winger Christian. Mm-hmm. We haven't found that person yet. And we're going to talk about our own personalities later on the show.
Skeptical Christian that has all these vices and these hang-ups.
Yeah, we haven't found that person
That would be
yet.
real, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Like for a counterexample, let's say that Hollywood had become overtly Christian influenced rather than more secular influenced. So it's overtly Christian. And so they spend all their time, all the Hollywood execs and all the people who work in Hollywood spend all their time around other Christians. And that's all they know. Maybe they have a little bit of a broader spectrum. Maybe they have some Catholics and evangelical Protestants and stuff, but they're still all Christians. Then they start producing shows and we start to notice that the atheist is always the same person. It's always
Nice flip.
The angry, hate all religion, have issues with their father, think they have special knowledge that God doesn't exist, and everybody else is drinking Kool-Aid. They only read the Bible to denigrate it. They believe that science is the only way to know truth. They think that belief in God is like belief in fairies or Santa Claus.
I think it's actually drinking the Kool-Aid.
Oh, did I say Kool-Aid?
Yeah.
It's drinking the Kool-Aid.
Because drinking Kool-Aid is good.
Yeah.
But not drinking the
Kool-Aid means something different.
That's the bad reference.
So this would be like a stereotype of atheist, and you have to go, wait a second. Don't these guys who are producing films, these Christian people, know any atheists?
Nope.
No, because they keep coming up with the same archetype. They're like borrowing from each other. Haha, that's funny. That's really good. And they just keep using the same thing over and over. So just like there's a spectrum of atheist personalities, there's a spectrum of different, even, like not just atheist and Christian, but different religious personalities within each religion. There would be a spectrum of Christians, and you'd think somebody who was sensitive to that, or at least thoughtful, would eventually come up with a Christian character on the show that's not this intellectually lazy, stereotyped, surfacey, shallow person.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know. I mean, I think it's hard because I found myself early on in my young apologetics years, I found myself flatlining atheists to that stereotype.
It's easier to deal with people when you flatline them.
Yeah, you can just put them in a nice little box.
Yeah.
Say, oh, I know you.
You believe
you
X.
This. Yeah,
so
you're this.
I'm going to take you down because this is all you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, if you watch Community and check out Shirley, she's one of those. She's been put in a box. She never surprises me, ever. Even with her, she has a jaded background.
Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me. Nothing she does ever surprises me because she's in this box, right? So I think it's easier to handle people when you categorize them and stick them in the box.
Right.
It's easier to attack them as well.
It's a whole lot easier to attack them that way. People just aren't static, though. We can't flatline them to a certain view because that becomes problematic. And I'm thinking about certain characters. If we were to do that, like Robert Downey Jr., if you knew him before he became Iron Man, he was actually...
way before Iron Man.
Yeah, way before Iron Man. He had all kinds of vices and problems, was in jail. I mean, the guy was just a mess. But you look at him today, and he's an incredible actor.
Yeah.
I mean, he's Iron Man.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen the Marvel movies, I won't tell you what he does.
Now you just ruined a whole bunch of kids.
I said nothing. But anyway, Iron Man, awesome. But, Robert Downey Jr., I can understand why he was the way he was because I was around when his dad was on TV. Yeah, his dad was a big mess, so it's no surprise that...
It was rough, yeah.
That, he turned out the way that he did. So, yeah, you really can't put people in a box because they're more than that.
Yeah. So, like, what should we do? Like, what should we do about this? So Hollywood is obviously sending out the same message over and over about... Especially evangelical Christians.
Right.
If you go back into before, like in the 50s and 40s, you get a lot of Catholic Christians in the movies. And then you still have them up through the 80s. And right now it's like, boy, they're really going after the evangelical Christians. So what we've already discussed what the problem with that is. It's flatlining them. Right. So what can we do? What can we do to bounce this?
We all have an imagination, so use that imagination in a different medium, in a different way. So movies aren't the only thing that allow us to use our imagination. They're great and they're easy. You sit and you receive, and there's some really good movies out there. But we also have the option of reading books. And if we go grab a book, it's going to take longer, but you're going to be able to process it a little bit longer as well. It may take days, may take weeks, may take years if you're reading Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky, but you get a character development within each of the people that are in these books, and your imagination can add to it, and you don't have somebody else's view or somebody else's interpretation that they throw on a person in an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Yeah.
And so you can really get a lot out of a book if you allow yourself to experience things that way.
Yeah,
so that's something we can do.
That's something we can do. That's really important, actually, because we're becoming more and more people who are consumers and passive receivers of entertainment, and not, well, for one, we're not producing as much entertainment ourselves, like being musicians, being artists, being poets, being writers. But secondly, you're right. We're consuming a lot of easy entertainment, and books are a little bit harder. I mean, for me, I would say they're not much harder, but
that's why you are the professor.
Oh man. Anyway, so many things I want to say on
The
that.
Bible's a book too. Read the Bible.
Oh, you just Jesus juked our people.
Hi, I'm the pastor. I
Read
can just say
the
that.
Bible. But here, let's go into the books. So like one of the books that I think has really good character development, I mean, generally good character development, is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. And so you get these characters who you could flatline down to like, oh, well, Mr. Darcy comes from privilege and he's arrogant and he's moneyed and, he doesn't know what it's like to have empathy for people who don't have much. Right. But he's really not that way. As you go on, you see that he is, yes, he's from that world and he has a bit of that arrogance, but he also has compassion and he wants to show it, but he doesn't know how to do this, right? Because he's from a certain station in life and they do have these classes at that time. And so there's some prejudice. And it happens with Elizabeth as well, Elizabeth Bennet, and that she can't allow herself to believe that he has compassion and kindness. And so she has prejudice against him as well. So it's a really good character development. And then you mentioned the brothers Karamazov.
Yes.
When I started reading that book by Dostoevsky,
it's just fun to say Dostoevsky.
Yeah,
it's Russian.
First of all, I read it on Kindle. I'm not going to recommend that to people because I got in there, no idea how long this book was. And I keep reading and I keep reading and I keep reading. And I'm a fast reader. And I keep reading and I'm like, I am not. The little progress bar was going nowhere. Like 2 weeks in, it barely moved. I'm like, what is going on? It's like a 900-page book.
It's like trying to download on dial-up. Remember those?
I don't know if anybody else remembers what a modem is, but hey.
Still in my 40s.
Those external modems like that.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry, it's a dial-up modem.
Dial-up, yeah.
We still have external modems.
It's crazy.
Anyway, so the Brothers Karamazov, it was very, very long. But the reason I'm talking about it is that it had like these like whole chapters just developing each brother's character. And I love that. What it did was it really brought them to life. It really made me think about who these characters were. And it made them, I actually said this to Roger, I said, I feel like these brothers are more real people than some of the real people I know. Like they are more well-developed, they have more depth, they have more complexity, and I know more of them because I'm seeing it through the author's eyes than a lot of the people I encounter. And so what like books like the Brothers Karamazov was helping me do, and Lord of the Rings, by the way, helped me
yes, Lord of
as
the Rings.
well, was to like through these characters, I could understand a little bit better about some of the things that go on in our world, right?
Yeah, and Tolkien was the same way as Dostoevsky. He liked the character development, and that's what he was after.
Yeah, and what they did, like, so Dostoevsky, what he does is he gives you like a Christian who desperately struggles with the problem of evil and he wrestles with it. He's not like, oh, that's nice, let me just hide my dirt in the background and I'll bake some brownies for everybody. Eat my brownies. He doesn't do that. That was a pretty good Shirley.
That was a really good Shirley. That's why I was like,
Yeah, he's like what you would expect to encounter with a person who is grappling. He's going into the priesthood and he's grappling with a lot of things. One of the brothers in the book. So there's a lot of great moments where people work through things that we would work through in a way that we would want to work through them, and we might not have the language for that. And when we see these characters going through that, and we go, "Hey, this guy's also a Christian." But he has these really hard questions, and here's where he's come to. That makes sense. That makes sense. I didn't finish my sentence. But when we just passively receive these easy entertainment that's easily digestible.
I'll help you. Digestible. Today's show is brought to you by Digestives.
That's not a thing. But they're easily digestible. Then you don't get, you start to get just that shallow view of people.
Yeah.
You flatline people. And you and I were watching another show, a YouTube channel, Cinema Therapy, and they were talking about this,
good.
how sometimes you can't break from that alternate reality back into yours very well unless you conscientiously do that. So knowing that, if you're passively receiving these messages over and over about this is what evangelical Christians are, and it's not very well developed and it's very shallow, not only are you not getting any help for how you have to engage your own community, like you can get through Pride and Prejudice and Lord of the Rings and the Brothers Karamazov, but you're also getting these messages over and over on some level that this is what Christians are. And you have to conscientiously break that to come back into the real world where people are very diverse.
Yeah, that's good.
So
yeah, well said. So we do want to take a break here for a second and highlight some people that are doing some great work. Mary Jo mentioned Cinema Therapy, and they're on YouTube. They do great work. I think I've cried on every one of their episodes. They're fantastic. So check them out on Cinema Therapy. And then the other one I do want to desperately highlight because they're doing such good work is at Houston Baptist University, where you are a professor.
Yes.
We have the Cinema and New Media Arts program, and they offer degrees where you can learn how to make film and all the things that go with that. Be a key grip. I don't even know what that is, but they offer
a best boy.
A best boy, yeah. But you learn how to do new media arts and cinema. And check out Houston Baptist University, and the website is
cinema.hbu.edu.
There it is. So check them out. All right. So the next segment that we're going into is Patreon specific. If you're not on Patreon yet, come on. $3 a month. $3 a month.
He's shaming you now.
And all that $3 a month does is it helps us to get microphones, lights, and all kinds of cool backdrops and stuff. It helps us to get resources so when we do these shows. So $3 a month, there's I think a $7 a month, and then there's up from there $15 a month or whatever you want to help us with. So yeah, check us out on Patreon.
I'll do my ask. So we're going to go into the next section in which we're going to further explore people in the Bible who aren't even represented in Hollywood. And Roger and I are going to talk about our own Christian personalities and try to relate them to people, key players in the Bible, and say, yeah, neither are we represented. So that's the kind of material we're going to keep on discussing in the Patreon section of the show. We'd love to have you join us. Become a patron of the Pastor and Professor.